Today, we're cracking open some of finance's biggest mysteries. We're diving deep, I mean really deep, into the world of financial auditing to figure out how anyone, and I mean anyone, puts a price on something that seems, well, unpriceable. Let's get to it. It all boils down to this one simple but huge question. How do we actually know a company's numbers are for real? That's the whole point of an auditor's job, right? To give us confidence that what we're seeing on paper reflects reality. But what happens when that reality is built on these super complex financial things that are almost impossible to value?
Think about it like this. Auditing a vault full of gold, that's pretty straightforward. You can see the bars, you can touch them, you can count them. But how in the world do you audit a complex derivative contract? You can't touch it, it's not a physical thing, it's just a legal agreement, a piece of paper whose value is all tangled up in future events and some seriously complex math. This, right here, is the central puzzle for financial auditors today.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to define what these black boxes actually are. Then, we'll look at how anyone even tries to price them. After that, we'll follow along with an auditor's investigation to see how they hunt for evidence. And finally, we'll tie it all together and see why this is so important for the entire financial system. Okay, let's kick things off with our first topic. What exactly are these mysterious black boxes? The fancy term is financial instruments, and let me tell you, they range from things that are super simple to stuff that is just mind-bendingly complex. So here's the official, kinda dry definition, but don't let it fool you. This one little sentence covers everything from a simple loan you might get from a bank to these incredibly complicated products. Basically, it's any contract that makes an asset for one person and a debt for another. It's really just a financial relationship, all spelled out in a contract. And these instruments are just packed with risk, seriously. You've got credit risk, that's the chance the other side of the deal just doesn't pay you. Then there's market risk, where the value could just plummet because of swings in the market. Liquidity risk is a big one. That means you might not be able to sell the thing when you need to, at least not for a fair price. And then there's operational risk, which is this catch-all for anything from bad internal systems to straight-up fraud. Now, to deal with all that danger, companies are supposed to have some pretty strong defenses in place. This means things like deciding exactly how much risk they're willing to stomach, making sure the people making the trades are separate from the people processing them. It means having powerful IT systems to track everything, and of course, really solid methods for figuring out what these things are worth. It's all about building a fortress of controls around these risky assets. All right, so we know what they are, and we know they're risky. But how do you actually put a price on something that feels so abstract? Let's dive into that. The whole entire process is guided by this one core idea: fair value. Now, this isn't what a company paid for something. It's the price it would get if they sold it in a normal everyday transaction between people in the market right now, today. It's a theoretical, right this second market price. To figure out that fair value, accountants use this 3-level ladder of evidence. Level 1 is the easy one. It's like looking at a price tag on a stock ticker. The price is right there, no questions asked. Level 2 is more like figuring out a house's value by looking at similar houses that just sold in the neighborhood. You're using comparable, observable data. But level 3? Level 3 is the true black box. There's no market to look at, so companies have to rely on their own internal models and assumptions. It really is an expert's best guess. And as you can imagine, as you go from level 1 down to level 3, the uncertainty about that price just skyrockets. A level 1 price is solid, it's certain. But a level 3 price, that's a highly subjective guess. And it's this huge range of uncertainty that makes auditing these things so incredibly challenging. So, faced with all this uncertainty and guesswork, how does an auditor even start their investigation? Well, it all begins with having the right frame of mind. Auditors just can't take a company's word for it. They can't. They have to operate with what's called professional skepticism. That means having a questioning mind, always being on the lookout for red flags that could point to a mistake or even fraud. It's about critically looking at the evidence, not just passively accepting it. So before they even dive in, the auditor starts building their case file. They have to get a handle on exactly what these instruments are and why the company even owns them. They need to know the super complex accounting rules like the back of their hand. And this is a big one. They have to figure out if they need to call in their own specialists to help. And of course, they need to get a really deep understanding of the company's own process for valuing everything. All right, the planning's done. Now it's time to gather the evidence. This is really the heart of the audit. This is where the auditor puts the company's numbers and their judgments to the test to see if they actually hold up. This question really gets to the core of the problem with those level 3 assets. When there's no market price, how does an auditor check a company's valuation? I mean, how do you confirm a number that is basically a very, very sophisticated guess? Well, they have a whole toolkit of techniques they can use. They can test the company's valuation models themselves, see if the math is sound. They can look for evidence from third-party sources, like special pricing services. If the company used its own expert, the auditor has to check out that expert's skills and make sure they're objective. And of course, they go back and test all those internal controls we talked about earlier. But, when it comes right down to it, for the most complex stuff, the audit becomes this deep dive into management's own judgments and assumptions. Are those assumptions reasonable? Do they line up with what's happening in the market? Is there any bias? This is the ultimate test of an auditor's skill and their skepticism. So, we've waded through the complexity, the uncertainty, and the investigation. But let's just pull back for a second and ask the big question. Why does this super intense, super technical process matter so much in the real world? I think this quote from the source material just says it all. When the market gets tough, the pressure goes way up. Suddenly, there are huge incentives to maybe bend the rules, to use the guesswork and level 3 values to hide losses or protect a bonus. The risk of things becoming fraudulent just goes through the roof. Because you see, at the end of the day, this is not just some accounting exercise. A credible, tough audit is the absolute bedrock of trust in our entire financial system. It's what gives investors, regulators, and all of us confidence that the numbers we're seeing are real. And without that trust, the whole system can just grind to a halt. And that leaves us with this one last, kind of provocative thought to chew on. In a world that relies so heavily on financial guesswork, where experts are valuing the unknowable and auditors are checking their judgment, who checks the checkers? It's a pretty powerful reminder that keeping our markets trustworthy is a constant and absolutely necessary battle.